Good morning, everybody. My name is Keiko Tanaka. My presentation is titled Our Collective Future, Building Sustainable Agri-Food Systems and Resilient Rural Communities, lesson from the US and Japan. This study compares beginning and new entry farmers in Japan and the United States. Both countries face common challenges of de-agrarianization and re-ruralization, largely as a result of rapid urbanization immediately after World War II. People left the rural home communities in search for better jobs and higher education. Although this contributed to sustainable economic growth in these countries, the role of agriculture increasingly began to decline while the dependence on food imports began to increase. With the declined significance of agriculture, rural communities began to experience distress. Today, only 19.3% of the U.S. population reside in the rural areas, while 9.2% of the Japanese population live in the rural area. The average age of farmers is 66.6 years old in Japan and 57.5 years old in the United States. When traveling across rural area in Kentucky and Kyoto, it is very hard to ignore sites of abandoned land, houses, buildings in the forest, neglect of infrastructure upkeep, and signs of environmental degradation. In this study, we look at future farmers. In particular, we ask the question of what knowledge and support mechanisms are necessary to support the future farmers to catalyze sustainable agri-food tradition in Japan and the United States using the case studies of Kyoto and Kentucky. In particular, we look at infrastructure to cultivate future farmers, namely public policy, formal informal education, public and private financial support, community involvement, and niche marketing opportunities. We compare these two cases because in a globalized agri-food system, understanding of localized mechanisms and operations is critical in identifying and addressing opportunities and challenges of our sustainable future. Similar to looking at vegetation in particular areas within the forest in order to understand the entire forest ecosystem. We use various methods, namely interviews, participant observations, and document analysis. In this section, I will present findings. First area of comparison is national policy. Both countries have specific law that aim to provide support for beginning farmers. In case of Japan, that is done through the basic law for food agriculture and rural areas. In the United States, Agriculture Improvement Act, also known as Farm Bill, provides support for beginning farmers support. What is different between these two countries is how those policies are implemented. In case of Japan, because it is centralized governmental structure, national government provide funding to prefecture government, and it becomes the duties of prefecture government to implement those policies through the programmings. Where in the United States, because it is a federation, the program is funded through directly to individual farmers or state offices of USDA, such as FSA, who provide funding to individual farmers. Second area of comparison is financial support. Beginning farmers in Kyoto receive funding through Young Farmers Fund, which consists of direct income support, interest-free loans for equipment and facilities, while new entry farmers in Kentucky receive funding through USDA Farm Service Agency, which consists of low-interest loans, facilitation for land transition under the Conservation Reserve Program. Also through Kentucky Governor's Office of Kentucky Agriculture Policy, they use Beginning Farmer Loan Program. These two cases indicate financial support in Japan emphasize on providing direct income to become farmer, while in United States, emphasis is providing loans to establish a farm. Third area of comparison is education. In terms of formal education, there are two institutional mechanisms to receive education in Kyoto. One is agricultural high school, and the second is Kyoto Agricultural School, which is more equivalent to associate degree in the United States. Where in Kentucky, both there are numerous opportunities for degree at the high school level and the college level, including degree programs in sustainable and organic agriculture. What is notable in case of Japan is its lack of a curricula on sustainable agriculture and organic farming through the formal education. In terms of informal education, differences between the two cases are rather notable. Japanese farmers, Kyoto farmers, receive training through elaborate formalized mentoring program and can access technical advice from prefectural extension service centers. Emerging NPOs such as Kyoto Organic Action also has become important space for informal education for beginning and new entry farmers. In Kentucky, on the other hand, formalized extensive system of cooperative extension programs provide much of informal education, training, and knowledge building for beginning farmers. NPOs such as Organic Agriculture of Kentucky, Community Farm Alliance also provide webinars, workshops, and field days. Next, we compare community involvement. There are multiple ways of defining community. In Kyoto, Japan, the involvement of so-called place-based communities such as hamlet and towns is very high. There are elaborate matchmaking processes between farmers and hamlets to ensure that beginning farmers or new entry farmers would design and operate their farms that are compatible to neighboring farms. However, the involvement of interest or practice-based community is still low because such communities are at the stage of immersion. In contrast, the involvement of place-based communities for beginning and entry farmers in Kentucky is almost non-existent beyond occasional advice from neighbor farmers, while national and state level NPOs and county extension service play crucial roles for these farmers for networking and building their knowledge and skills in sustainable farming and marketing. Finally, we compare niche marketing opportunities. Kyōyasai is a nationally and internationally known brand, which is very tightly controlled through the elaborate certification system involving multiple stakeholders. JA also has its varieties within the Kyōyasai brand. Kentucky Pride Program is a state-based market program for in-state markets, which has a broad definition and relatively loose process for approval. While QSI brand aims to access national, international markets, therefore extra local oriented, Kentucky Pride Program aims to build in-state markets through direct marketing outlets, restaurants, and grocery store, in that sense, locally oriented. In Kyoto, opportunities for niche marketing by beginning and new entry farmers are still emerging. While I observed more diverse and dynamic niche market opportunities available to beginning farmers in Kentucky. Let me briefly talk about theoretical insight from the two cases. These two cases of beginning farmers illustrate, first, varied approaches to building moral economy shaped by different scales of movement by heterogeneous actors from macro to micro level. Second, these cases also suggest how contradictions in agrarianism are imploded in these two countries. At the present day, as Van der Ploeg and Hisano argued, we observe the hybrid mode of representization, agrarianization, and ruralization. Finally, the concept of community-based capitalism is very useful in understanding creative effort by beginning and new entry farmers in Kyoto and Kentucky to realize their vision for sustainable farms and a healthy food economy. In Kyoto, the sentiment that land is cultural asset is very strong. By shifting the centrality of economic activities to community, not just beyond the broadly defined beyond the place-based, from market, we can appreciate diverse narratives and meanings of economic development. There are three lessons from the case studies of beginning and new entry farmers in Kyoto and Kentucky. These lessons are the questions that need to be asked in designing programs and policies for supporting future farmers. Lesson 1 concerns the question of what should agriculture be for the future. We observed how farm and farmers are defined differently in Kentucky and Kyoto. Farm can be defined in a continuum from enterprise, factory, to livelihood, while farmer can be defined in a continuum of from cultivator to entrepreneur laborer. Based on how these categories are defined, different infrastructure support and tools are needed to realize the vision of sustainability. This is a picture of the vertical farming in Kyoto as an example of hyper-capitalist sustainable farm. Is this the vision for our sustainable future? Lesson 2 relates to the question of what should be the role of agriculture in rural development. How shall we balance between the goal to make living from farming and the goal to make living in rural community? To ensure that these goals are compatible, future researchers, policymakers, and other change agents must listen to and incorporate multiple narratives of economy and community into the future programs and policy. Final lesson is about building capacity. What capacity needs to be built to realize diverse visions for the sustainable future? How to create stable institutional mechanisms that become space for networking and vehicle for capacity building while providing farmers access to the community of experts and library of knowledge and cultivating army of change agents for farmers. In Japan, this is probably one of the biggest challenges to be addressed. To conclude, one common image of sustainable agri-food system described by my study is farmers as cultivators who nourish the earth, bodies, and souls. On this FEAST project, we have observed and were inspired by creative visions, initiatives, actions, and ideas by farmers, entrepreneurs, community leaders, activists, and scholars across the world to improve our agri-food systems. In short, this project created a space, like this symposium, where diverse actors who work on different segments in a globalized agriculture and food system can converge, share creative ideas, and build their respective capacity to realize their shared vision for the sustainable future. Our challenge lies in building a permanent institutional mechanism that sustain and expand this space. Thank you very much.